So EVO 2022 was broadcasting over the first weekend of August and I was watching the shit out of it. Now while I do love me a good Final Fantasy game, fighting games have always had their own special place in my heart. And after watching many hype sets in Guilty Gear and Street Fighter, I figured I might as well make a video about my experience with fighting games. It originally started with Super Smash Bros. For the Nintendo 64. And what really shows my age is that I still remember when the commercials aired for this game.
Introducing Super Smash Bros., where all your favorite characters go toe-to-toe in one 4-player star-studded slam fest, only on Nintendo 64.
Like the majority of other 9-year-olds at the time, I was pretty clueless on how to really play, which meant my strategy revolved around items and spamming special moves because they were flashy. This of course bit me in the ass every time I had to go against Metal Mario and then the Master Hand. Despite being unskilled, this game was an excellent toy box for my child self to goof off in. Coming back to this game after getting neck deep in traditional fighting games has been an interesting experience. Just looking at the base cast of 8, you can see how Sakurai's enjoyment of fighting games bled over into how each of these characters play while still being faithful to their home games. All of them are at least loosely based on a classic fighting game archetype while having a very Nintendo spin on it. Mario, fittingly, is this game's Shoto, much like Ryu from Street Fighter. He's very well rounded while having a fireball, a Shoryuken type move, and a multi-hitting spin attack for his special moves. Given he's always the balanced one in Mario games, this loose connection to the Shoto archetype is fitting. Donkey Kong checks off several boxes for traits found in grapplers and other big body characters. He's harder to kill, has heavy hitting attacks and a strong throw game, while his large frame makes him vulnerable to combos. Since his home games are platformers, Donkey Kong is also faster than you'd expect compared to your typical big body character. Link and Samus both have multiple ranged options in their home games, so it makes sense that they are different takes on the zoning archetype, with Link being more keep away oriented in this game while Samus has more of a mid-range spacing focus to our game plan. Your mileage will vary on how effective they are at this though, given how Smash 64 plays. Like I said before, these are just loose connections to the archetypes I'm mentioning. Yoshi and Kirby were harder to pin down since neither of them have an easy correlation to an archetype that I could notice. Both kind of fall into the versatile character with a gimmick playstyle that forces you to think differently about how to fight them, which honestly makes sense given their home games are very much about being cutesy and quirky, at least when Kirby isn't fighting another eldritch abomination. And finally, Fox and Pikachu share a lot of traits in common with Rushdown characters such as high mobility along with great pressure and combo tools which are offset by weaker durability. Fox was probably tricky to design, but I think his Rushdown playstyle is fitting given how Star Fox is a game that's constantly moving, and Pikachu's speed has been baked into its identity since Pokemon Red and Blue, so that's a no-brainer. Again, these aren't one-to-one matches to the archetypes I've mentioned, but simply an observation of comparable traits. Now while Smash 64 was fun, the moment Melee released, I lost my mind like every other tween my age. Wait, this game came out in 2001? Excuse me while I just wither away from old age. Alright, back on the world losing their minds over the release of the GameCube and Melee. It really can't be understated how much of a massive leap this was from Smash 64. It had way more characters, stages, and system mechanics that give the game a lot of depth to this day. Of course, I was like 12 when I got my hands on it and nowhere near savvy enough to understand how to master any of those mechanics. I was just excited that I could play Peach and Zelda, which looking back, really was the first sign that I wasn't straight, but my bisexual realization isn't the focus of this video. Much like Smash 64, I also used Melee very much like a digital toy box to create little scenarios with the playable cast that my tween mind could imagine. And having played it again for this video, I can see why the Melee community clings for dear life to this game. Not because it's objectively the best, but the game is fast, responsive, and feels great to play even in the 2020s. Now going into high school, Brawl released in my sophomore year I want to say. It's rather fascinating how this game went from being considered the pinnacle of Smash to now being considered the worst by many. Granted, it's mostly competitive Melee players who still despise the game, but picking it up again after a decade, oh boy. It's not a bad game, but things like random tripping combined with how slow and floaty movement is added a level of clunkiness. They definitely were trying to zero in on the Wii's target audience with this game, and because it was still popular when I was in early college, I decided to try and go competitive with the game. Though I made the incredibly bad decision to be a Samus main for my competitive career in Brawl. Let me explain for those of you not in the know about ancient competitive video game history. In 2013, Melee Samus was ranked 11th out of all 26 characters in terms of viability, which meant that she was a solid and perfectly usable character in tournaments. When I joined competitive Brawl at this time, she was ranked 32 out of 38 characters in terms of viability. To put this in perspective, she wasn't just bad, she was grossly unviable given how massive the gaps in character power were in Brawl, and 21-year-old me thought I could prove the community wrong on her potential. Clearly having no actual understanding of how tier lists worked. Given what I understand now about fighting games and character power, it makes a lot more sense why Samus was ranked so low in those lists. Many of the good options she had in Melee that made her a solid zoning and footsie hybrid character were heavily nerfed in Brawl. Charge Shot, both a decent zoning tool and solid KO option, was now unable to KO reliably even on lighter characters until at least 125%. Super Missiles, her primary projectile for zoning, were basically gutted, taking longer to fire, traveling slower, and worst of all, lost all practical KO potential. Bombs, which Samus used for mobility, unique pressure, and recovery, had their on-contact hitbox changed to strictly a timer, which gutted their usability to be only used for recovery. In terms of normals, her dash attack, tilts, smash attacks, neutral air, and back air all received nerfs, either to their damage, knockback, KO potential, frame data, or all of the above, which combined with her inferior movement options due to the lack of wave dashing severely hindered her ground game. Sure, her Z-Air was significantly buffed and made for a great poke, but that wasn't going to offset the other nerfs I listed. This left us with a slow, heavy character that had below average attack speed, very few reliable combos, poor defensive options, and was god-awful at finishing off stocks. It was not wrong to say Samus's game plan was to annoy you at range, then pray that she can land a fresh D-tilt to kill. Her zoning was still decent and she had above average survivability, but that was not enough to overcome such severe flaws in everything else. I'm not sure what possessed me not to main Peach, who was my secondary at the time, at least she was fringe viable. Midway into my unremarkable Smash career, I started taking interest in this little game some of you might know called Blazblue, and this really was the beginning of the end of my relationship with Smash even to this day. At the time, Continuum Shift was the most recent version, and while a lot of my high school weebness was fading, the game looked super fun. Compared to Smash, this was like entering a different dimension in terms of fighting games. The character power was still high, but unlike Brawl, where even casuals were realizing how absurd Meta Knight was, it was harder to feel it until you reached a certain skill level. Additionally, every character felt vastly better designed with their own unique mechanics, and the cast was smaller so there weren't as many matchups to learn. Being me, I naturally chose one of the most technical characters in the game, Rachel Alucard. Personally, I've never been a fan of anime lolly girls, but I really liked how she could control the wind for zoning and some really stupid pressure. Though I eventually swapped to Light G for a bit because I really liked the tragedy of her story in Continuum Shift. She also got me to buy my first arcade stick. This completely bewildered a Smash player when I brought it to a meetup to play with another Smasher I befriended that also really liked Blazblue. I still have fond memories from surprising that Smash player and seeing people get hype when I did a set of my Lychee versus my friend's Bang. I ended up losing though due to some sloppy confirms despite having a solid neutral game, but it was a great time and a close match. I hope that Smasher is doing well because it was really fun to play against him and talk about the game at the time. Around this time, I had gotten into another ArcSys game that's gotten way more popular recently, known as Guilty Gear. At the time, only Accent Core Plus R was out, so instead of the gorgeous models we know from Xrd and Strive, it was sprites. I picked up Dizzy since she had a similar playstyle as Rachel that solidified to this day what I look for in a fighting game main. And yes, I am still waiting for when Dizzy will eventually come to Strive. Now compared to Smash, these two games had completely changed my sensibilities on how characters should be designed, both in terms of core mechanics and for asking the question of what this character's game plan is. We'll use Testament from Strive as an example, both because I play them and their core game plan has easy visuals. And yes, for those not in the know-how, Testament is non-binary / agender, which we respect in this household. So Testament is a zoning character who wants to control space and inflict stain state on their opponent, which can be applied by either tagging them with the Crow or the Nostrovia super. When stained, Testament's next normal, whether on hit or block, will trigger Stain to perform an extra hit. It's a really simple mechanic, but it has a lot of applications that allow Testament to be disgusting on the offensive. Hitting a stained opponent makes almost everything safe on block, gives them access to better combos, and allows Testament to lock the opponent down, especially in the corner. This makes the characters sound too good, but Testament has some key weaknesses to keep their design in check. Their attacks either have long startup or recovery, so they really can't just press buttons without being punished. Testament also has limited defensive options, which can make it hard to escape pressure since they lack an invincible option. Additionally, their game plan takes 2 steps to get going, which gives their opponent time to play around them. And this is why Arc System Works has great game design for their characters. At base, they've established what this character's fundamental game plan is, then they layer attributes on top of it. Of course, there is the occasional stupid character, Happy Chaos, but just about every character is designed to have an overwhelming strength to push their win condition, which makes these games endlessly fun for me to analyze. Some of you may be wondering what happened to Smash after I fell down the ArcSys rabbit hole, and that can easily be summed up as this.
Oh. I forgot. You're broken. I don't want to play with you anymore.
The more I fell in love with Guilty Gear and Blazblue, the more frustrated I became with the design decisions in Smash even to this day. And it's reached a point where I can appreciate the skill required to play the game at a high level, but it's a game I have no desire to study or actively improve at anymore. To be fair, Smash taught me some lessons along with Blazblue and Guilty Gear that are universal to any fighting game, and it might shock some of you to learn that these are lessons that are applicable to real life. Now, it's no secret that in order to get good at fighting games, you have to want it and put in the work for it. And unlike in an RPG, there's no EXP bar on screen that fills whenever you practice to measure your progress. There will be days where you'll play matches and constantly lose or go into training mode and be unable to practice beyond what you already know. You may reach a point that will make you question if it's even worth continuing, or maybe just accept that you've reached your maximum potential. Plenty of others stopped at this point, so why shouldn't you? Things will suck hard during this period of time, and it will feel like you're actively getting worse at points. But maybe, just maybe, you push through it despite the slog, and at some point, things just click. Instead of sucking, your neutral is fluid and calculated, the sequence for that one combo feels far more natural, and you're able to kick ass and take names again. I'm sure anyone who's watching this video has experienced this in their real life at some point because it's a universal human experience. Perhaps instead of getting good at a game, you wanted to learn a skill like drawing, or you're just trying to break into your dream career. So what did I learn from all of this by playing fighting games? Well, the obvious and boring answer is that if I want anything, I have to work hard for it. But the more important lesson, I think, is if I want to make any meaningful changes to keep improving, I have to challenge my own ego while also practicing self-compassion. And this last one will sound unbearably cheesy, but no matter how many times the game or life knocks me down, if I want things to get better, I have to get back up. Yes, I'm painfully aware of how much that last one makes me sound like a shonen protagonist. But these lessons actually mean a lot to me and have helped challenge the feelings of shame I have towards choices I made in my 20s. I haven't admitted this to many people, but that time period in particular is when I feel like my life was overwhelmingly defined by failure. And it's taken a toll on my mental health that I still grapple with sometimes. Thankfully, I have a lovely therapist and supportive friends to help with this, but to an extent, fighting games have given me the tools to help move through this unhealthy mentality. Now, I'm sure the more cynical viewers watching are questioning how much success this has actually brought me so far. Well, the truth is, things haven't drastically improved yet, but that's not going to stop me from working to achieve what I want. And I think that's a much healthier mindset to have, especially with how bleak the world has been lately. Given the expectations placed upon us these days in America, playing fighting games has also given me a healthier relationship with failure as well. It still stings a lot, but I've gotten much better both in game and in life, accepting that failure is natural and a door opening instead of closing. I think because the psychology needed to improve at fighting games is very similar to the introspection needed to improve your real life, that it feeds into the genre staying niche. Which I do understand, since many people after a long day want to be able to relax and unwind rather than commit to something with a mandatory training arc. At the same time, however, I think because fighting games can also help give you the tools to cope with real-life situations, that they bring their own substantive value. In making this video, I tried to stay grounded in my discussion because it would be too easy and saccharine to say that my life was fundamentally changed by fighting games. Instead, this is about how a game genre I love gave me tangible tools to help improve myself outside of the game in small steps. This comparison is a bit of a stretch, but I'm going to compare fighting games to how extremely dark and messed up the original versions of fairy tales were. And that's because those stories weren't meant to be feel-good and empowering. They were intended to give children the tools to help them navigate situations they'd encounter as an adult. Like I said, not the best comparison, but I'm trying. So if you've ever wanted to try a fighting game but felt you weren't good enough, maybe give that game a second chance. You never have to be good to enjoy these games, and it may even help you make friends who can help with rough patches outside of the game. And if you actually want to hear more about my thoughts on fighting games, let me know in the comments. Don't worry, I haven't abandoned Final Fantasy content, I just need a healthy break right now. Also, I finally got off my butt and made a Discord server for you guys to hang out in. You can find a link in the description of this video. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this video insightful.